Little Panda just locked eyes with the Elf Queen and decided today was the day for maximum violence. This absolute unit of panda grins like he's about to commit war crimes and announces he's ready to play with her. The Elf Queen, clearly not understanding who she's dealing with, tells him to keep his dirty paws off her Royal Highness. Big mistake, lady. Without even blinking, Little Panda delivers a gut punch that would make professional boxers weep. The Elf Queen doubles over, coughing up blood like she just got hit by a freight train. The little mockingbird nearby repeats her words mockingly, asking if she's seriously trying to act tough right now. Little Panda reminds everyone present that these elves started this whole mess and are actively trying to murder his friends. No mercy for backstabbers. The panda's bloodlust kicks into overdrive as he declares his intention to kill the Elf Queen without showing any mercy whatsoever. Green energy beams start shooting toward him from every direction, but Little Panda treats them like they're moving in slow motion, weaving between the attacks with supernatural grace. The elves riding their flying birds start screaming about his audacity and attacking their precious queen, demanding his immediate execution. Little Panda decides it's time to introduce these fools to the signature move. Fire energy swirls around him as he charges up his solar flare sphere, a technique that sounds exactly as devastating as it looks. The attack erupts outward in a brilliant explosion of destruction, sending elves and their bird mounts crashing to the ground in a symphony of chaos. Welcome to the barbecue, boys. The battlefield becomes painted red with the aftermath of his assault. The Elf Queen realizes she's dealing with something far more dangerous than she initially thought. She begins chanting an incantation while swirling flames gather into her right hand, preparing what appears to be her ultimate technique. With a triumphant shout, she unleashes pillars of flame, creating towering columns of fire that trap Little Panda and several unfortunate elves within their burning embrace. She extends her flaming hand toward the trapped panda, telling him to burn alive in her magical inferno. Screams echo across the battlefield as the flames engulf everything within the pillars. The fire columns begin converging, creating one massive pillar of flame that completely engulfs Little Panda in what appears to be certain death. The Elf Queen laughs maniacally at what she believes is his demise, already planning to skin him and trample on his corpse later. This chick needs therapy. Suddenly, the wave of flames begins moving in the opposite direction, catching the Elf Queen completely off guard. Little Panda emerges from the inferno, gathering all the flame energy into a massive sphere before hurling it directly at the stunned queen. He shouts that she shouldn't underestimate him just because he's cute, handsome, and lofty, which is probably the most adorable threat ever uttered in combat. His flaming fist connects with the Elf Queen's face with devastating force. She's absolutely horrified that this panda had the audacity to punch her royal features, calling him ill-mannered while completely missing the irony of the situation. Little Panda isn't finished with his royal beatdown, though. He follows up with a flying kick that sends her face first into reality, shocking even the birds she's riding. Equal rights, equal fights. The attack sends both the Elf Queen and her mount crashing to the ground with an explosion that shakes the entire battlefield. Little Panda casually comments on how unpleasant it must be to fall from such a high place, delivering psychological damage along with the physical destruction. The Elf Queen's bird screeches in rage from behind him, but another massive explosion occurs before it can do anything meaningful. Little Panda demonstrates his complete dominance by sending the bird crashing down as well, then standing triumphantly on top of it like he's claiming his throne. He reveals that he's capable of wielding both fire and ice magic, explaining that the Elf Queen's flames weren't even close to being hot enough to hurt him. The revelation shows just how outclassed she truly was from the beginning. Walking away from the defeated bird, Little Panda delivers a scathing commentary on the Elf Queen's leadership style. He points out how her subordinates were willing to risk everything to protect her, yet she was perfectly willing to sacrifice them for her own benefit. His fury builds as he calls her vicious and promises to take her head as payment for her crimes. Panda's got standards. Flames gather in Little Panda's hand as he shouts that he's not something dirty, addressing her earlier insult with righteous anger. The Elf Queen grits her teeth in desperation, knowing she's completely outmatched. Little Panda delivers another devastating punch while proudly declaring that he's a Class 1 protected species, which might be the most uniquely threatening statement ever made in combat. The punch creates a burst of flames that sends the Elf Queen crashing to the ground once more, leaving her unconscious while he tells her to reflect on her actions. Just when victory seems complete, a sudden blast of power pierces straight through Little Panda's body. He coughs up blood, realizing too late that someone has ambushed him from behind. Nature God floats in the air, having delivered a sneak attack that would make any honorable warrior sick to their stomach. Little Panda drops to the ground with a sickening thud while Nature God simply watches him fall. Coward move, divine boy. Meanwhile, in a completely different location, a group of powerful beasts is traveling through space at incredible speeds. The king of the Iron Eater tribe, who happens to be Little Panda's older brother, asks Ninetails how long it will take them to reach their destination. Ninetails explains that their master took 15 days while rushing, but since they're using the void for transportation, it should only take them an hour. Little Panda's older brother shouts in frustration that the fight will have ended by then. He declares his intention to head to his little brother's side first. Unable to shake the bad feeling that's been gnawing at him throughout their journey, Long of the Draconian race immediately volunteers to accompany the king of the Iron Eater tribe on his rescue mission. Ninetails gives tactical orders to the remaining team members, telling Glacier and Tyrannosaurus to head to the 6th city while asking if their big sister will head to the 4th city. Ninetails replies that the 4th city is already in ruins and that she will instead go to where Xiaoling is located, showing the widespread nature of the current conflict. Back in the central region, a massive crash occurs before one of the tallest buildings in the area. Beasts lay scattered on the ground with their mouths hanging open as the destruction continues to spread throughout the region. Yulei, the master of magnetism, looks down from his elevated position, wondering what's happening with Little Panda. He recognizes that Little Panda's aura is fluctuating wildly, which is never a good sign during combat. Boss knows something's wrong. Against all odds, Little Panda stands up with his wound completely healed through sheer determination and possibly some hidden regenerative abilities. He shouts about how he almost died and comments on how his new opponent matches exactly what their master described about these enemies. Little Panda looks up at Nature God with pure hatred, calling him despicable and shameless for his cowardly sneak attack. Nature God dismisses Little Panda's accusations completely, stating that only the final result matters in warfare. Dream God adds that as long as they can achieve victory, they're willing to pay any price necessary, showing the ruthless mindset of their enemies. A huge black pillar covered in magical circles stands tall in the background, with an enemy god floating above it while the Dream and Nature gods position themselves at its base. The stage is set for what appears to be the most dangerous battle Little Panda has ever faced. Game just changed completely. The battlefield just got a complete makeover because the reinforcements have arrived in the most dramatic way possible. A massive crash echoes behind Little Panda as someone steps onto the scene, followed by another earth-shaking impact as a colossal lizard foot slams down. Standing before the three enemy gods are now Little Panda, Yulei, and Emperor Crocodile, forming what might be the most intimidating rescue squad in manga history. The boys are back in town. Yulei takes one look at the three gods floating there like they own the place and shouts that they absolutely will not be slaughtered without a fight. The opposing gods laugh at this declaration, basically telling them to bring it on and see what happens. Without wasting another second on trash talk, Little Panda, Yulei, and Emperor Crocodile charge forward into battle without any hesitation whatsoever, because apparently diplomacy was never an option. Meanwhile, in the second city, another towering black pillar covered in magical circles has emerged from the ground, confirming that this coordinated attack is happening across multiple locations simultaneously. A tail swishes through the air as Kangaroo shouts about being one step too late to prevent this catastrophe. Accompanied by Black Cat and a group of barbarian warriors, Kangaroo expresses his frustration about allowing enemies like these to infiltrate their territory in the first place. Domu simply makes a dismissive sound and announces his complete boredom with the current situation. He declares that he's ready to play with them, which sounds absolutely terrifying coming from a god who clearly views mortals as entertainment. Red demons begin gathering at the base of the black pillar, where Domu stands triumphantly at the top, looking down at his enemies like they're insects. He commands his minions to eliminate their opponents without mercy. Kangaroo rallies his companions by shouting for them to demonstrate their powers as the Earth's proud creatures, refusing to be intimidated by divine beings who think they can just waltz into their home. He launches himself into the air with incredible force, easily reaching the top of the massive black pillar and creating an explosion of raw power upon impact. When the dust and debris from the explosion finally settle, the silhouettes of both Domu and Kangaroo become visible, standing face to face with their elbows pressed against each other in a deadlock. Staring contest of champions. Domu notices something peculiar about his opponent and asks if Kangaroo is really a subordinate of the divine tree, since he doesn't possess the unique spirit power that should be characteristic of such beings. Kangaroo grits his teeth and firmly denies any connection to the divine tree, clearly offended by the suggestion. Another explosion rocks the area as the two warriors clash violently before separating to reassess their opponent's capabilities. Domu accuses every creature from Kangaroo's plan of being arrogant beyond measure, apparently taking personal offense at their refusal to bow down to divine authority. His energy begins blazing around him as he transforms into his true god physique, revealing his terrifying divine form. Flames burn from his head and core while massive horns sprout from his shoulders and back, making him look like something straight out of humanity's worst nightmares. Kangaroo responds to this intimidation display by admitting that he's never actually killed a god before, but he's definitely interested in giving it his first shot. Dark energy swirls around him as he transforms into his own darkness physique, proving that he's not about to back down from this challenge regardless of the power difference between them. Domu laughs with genuine interest at this development, clearly excited about facing an opponent who isn't immediately cowering in fear. He hurls a massive ball of blazing energy directly toward Kangaroo, testing his opponent's defensive capabilities. Kangaroo's right hand turns completely black with purple clawed fingers extending from his transformed appendage. Screaming with determination, he faces the giant ball of destructive energy with his own dark power, refusing to retreat even as the massive explosion hits the ground with earth-shaking force. In another area of the battlefield, Shadow Tiger releases a thunderous roar that echoes across the combat zone. The other tigers are engaged in fierce battles against various enemy beasts, proving that this conflict has spread across multiple fronts simultaneously. White Tiger soars higher into the air at Shaylan's urgent request, demonstrating incredible aerial capabilities despite the challenging atmospheric conditions. The lack of oxygen at such extreme altitudes doesn't deter her in the slightest, knowing that her enhanced physiology can endure the harsh environment. White Tiger shoots high up into the sky, reaching altitudes that extend far beyond the cloud cover and into the upper atmosphere. Xiaolan looks back in complete surprise, discovering a massive magical formation spreading out below them like a spider web of mystical energy. She realizes with growing horror that this formation encompasses all of the cities where their companions are currently fighting for their lives. Though she doesn't understand the exact purpose of this magical construct, she has absolutely no doubt that it's designed for something catastrophically bad. That's not good at all. With this terrifying revelation, Xiaolan knows that they must destroy those black pillars as quickly as possible before whatever plan the enemy gods have in motion can reach completion. The urgency of their situation has just increased exponentially, and time is clearly running out for everyone involved in this conflict. Adele appears behind her with perfect timing, asking why they decided to fly up to such extreme heights. Seeing the falcon arrive at this crucial moment, Xiaolan feels genuinely glad that the bird appeared at exactly the right time to witness this discovery, because they're going to need all the help they can get to spread this information. In the 6th city, the battle rages on with equal intensity as Thorn faces numerous enemy beasts using her vine-based combat techniques. An entire army of rat emperors bare their fangs as they launch coordinated attacks against a powerful enemy force. The earth itself seems to gather and respond as Thorn confronts a massive enemy that appears to be some horrifying fusion of slug and worm characteristics, creating one of the most disgusting opponents imaginable. Thorn shouts for King Gang to his sister as he employs his giant earth form to engage the massive worm creature in direct combat. Nearby, a black cloaked figure floats ominously in the air, radiating an aura of divine power that immediately catches Thorn's attention. She quickly recognizes this being as another enemy god and tells King Gang that she'll leave the current battlefield to him while she handles this new threat. The vine shoots upward at incredible speed toward the floating god, catching the divine being completely off guard with a sudden attack. Thorn tightly wraps the god with her powerful vines, sending the enemy crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact that shakes the entire area. For a moment, Thorn thinks she successfully defeated the god, but a sudden ray of brilliant light flashes from the impact crater. Victory was too easy. Surprised by this development, Thorn can only watch in growing concern as the god rises from the ground, revealing 4 pairs of bright, luminous wings sprouting from its back in a display of divine majesty. The god addresses the assembled creatures, demanding that they sing praises and honor its divine presence while calling them sinners who deserve punishment for their rebellion against divine authority. The situation has escalated beyond anything they could have imagined, and the true power of their enemies is beginning to reveal itself. Wings means business time. Thorn releases her energy with deadly precision as she prepares to face off against this self-righteous divine being who clearly thinks way too highly of himself. The enemy god repeats his demand for praise like a broken record, but Thorn has absolutely had enough of this nonsense and decides to let her vines do the talking. One end of her vine shoots forward and bites directly into the god's face with vicious intent, and Thorn commands it to drain the enemy completely dry like some kind of botanical vampire. Nature's revenge is brutal. The winged god grips the vine with his hands and pulls it off his face, smugly revealing that angels don't actually have blood running through their veins. He asks why someone as pure as Thorn isn't offering him the praise he believes he deserves, which shows just how delusional these divine beings really are. Thorn shouts back that only one being in existence is worthy of receiving her praise, and it definitely isn't this feathered freak. Numerous vines burst from the ground as she rises up and declares that this god isn't worthy of anything except a beatdown. Feathers begin floating through the air in an ominous display as the winged god asks for a moment of silence to honor Thorn's impending death, because apparently gods have zero chill when it comes to trash talk. A portion of the god's face catches the light, revealing 3 pupils contained within a single eye, which is probably the most disturbing thing anyone could see in combat. She announces her intention to trample Thorn beneath her feet, clearly underestimating what she's dealing with. Meanwhile, the teleportation gate in King Gang's city sits positioned beneath his massive statue, serving as a crucial communication link between the different battlefields. The gate suddenly lights up with magical energy, and Ada emerges from it carrying vital intelligence that could change everything. Ada calls out to both King Gang and Lang Feng, delivering Xiaolan's urgent message about destroying the black pillar that's been causing so much trouble. She explains how the pillar is triggering some kind of massive magical formation across multiple cities, and even though they don't know exactly what it's designed to accomplish, they absolutely need to destroy it before it's too late. Ada prepares to fly off immediately, explaining that she can't stay to help because she needs to inform all the other fighters about this critical discovery. Just as she takes flight toward the teleportation gate, a bright ray of light shoots out of nowhere with deadly accuracy. The attack heads straight for Ada's flight path and simultaneously blasts the teleportation gate, creating a massive explosion that destroys their only means of rapid communication between cities. Communication is down, boys. King Gang and Lang Feng shout an alarm for both the Falcon and the destroyed teleportation gate, realizing that their situation just became exponentially more difficult. The bright ray of light fades away as the enemy god smugly claims that whistleblowers cannot be allowed to remain alive under any circumstances. He adds that everything must be kept pure, even when it comes to the fundamental elements themselves. Revealing his twisted philosophy about cosmic order, King Gang and Lang Feng immediately charge at the god without hesitation, creating a huge explosion at the top of the black pillar as their combined assault rocks the entire structure. Thick smoke fills the air around the impact zone, temporarily obstructing the enemy's vision and giving them a tactical advantage. King Gang shouts Lang Feng's name, and his partner immediately understands the unspoken plan they've developed through countless battles together. Raising his hands high above his head, a long dark blade materializes from pure energy, and he brings it down with devastating force, intending to completely destroy the pillar and end this threat. Dark energy erupts violently from the top of the black pillar as Lang Feng's attack connects with tremendous force. The powerful blast easily dissipates all the smoke from above, revealing the aftermath of his assault on the mysterious structure. However, the sharp end of his dark blade merely rests harmlessly at the top of the pillar, having failed to penetrate its surface. Lang Feng stares in complete surprise at the fact that there isn't even a tiny dent visible on the pillar's surface. That thing is tank-level durable. Two bright rays of light suddenly shoot forth with lethal precision, targeting both King Gang and Lang Feng simultaneously and literally tearing them both in half with overwhelming divine power. The attack demonstrates just how outclassed they are against this particular enemy, who clearly operates on a completely different level than anything they faced before. Three bright sharp eyes become visible on one side of the god's face as he reveals crucial information about the nature of their conflict. He explains that an element cannot be destroyed through physical means alone, and this fundamental rule applies equally to both himself and the black pillar they're trying to destroy. This revelation changes everything about their approach to this battle. King Gang and Lang Feng's bodies begin regenerating from their devastating injuries as they reveal that they also possess elemental powers, proving that this fight is far from over despite their apparent defeat. Smoke starts dissipating around them as a massive shadow with 7 glowing eyes looms menacingly before the two warriors, creating an atmosphere of genuine terror. A red face covered with 7 sharp piercing eyes becomes fully visible as the god asks about their rankings within the established hierarchy of powerful beings. He observes that these two opponents don't appear to be included in the top 10 great beasts ranking system that governs their world. The god mentions that the recently defeated Sigma and Grace held the 8th and 9th positions respectively, giving context to the power levels involved. He repeats his question about their specific rank with growing curiosity. King Gang and Lang Feng admit that they will disappoint him since they aren't considered worthy enough to deal with someone of his caliber according to the official rankings. The god's grotesque true form finally becomes fully revealed as he announces that his rank is 3rd in the entire god ranking system, making him one of the most powerful divine beings in existence. He promises to tear them apart piece by piece, and given his demonstrated abilities, this threat carries serious weight. In another section of the battlefield, feathers continue floating through the air as countless vines whip through the space with deadly precision. The vines successfully wrap around the winged god, binding him in an extremely tight grip that should prevent most forms of movement. Purple energy begins emanating from the god's divine form, and one of his wings shoots a concentrated purple ray of light that narrowly misses Thorn's head by mere inches. The attack grazes Thorn despite her evasive efforts, leaving a visible wound across one of her eyes and proving that even mere misses from divine attacks can cause serious damage. The god dismissively states that all of Thorn's attacks are completely useless against his divine nature. Undeterred by this psychological warfare, Thorn employs her vines to physically rip the god's head clean from its body in a display of shocking brutality. The severed head gets thrown to the ground with tremendous force. Tentacles suddenly appear beneath the god's detached head, revealing a face that contains multiple mouths speaking simultaneously in a horrifying cacophony. One mouth shouts angrily at Thorn's blatant disrespect toward divine authority, while another mouth scolds her for her crude and boorish manner of speaking, and yet another mouth pleads desperately to their lord for forgiveness regarding this humiliating situation. Multiple personality disorder much. Thorn notices that the enemy actually bled when she decapitated it, leading her to determine that the head represents its primary weakness and vulnerability. Intending to capitalize on this discovery and finish the enemy permanently, she uses her vines to wrap them tightly around the god's severed head. Additional vines join the assault, wrapping around the target with the explicit intention of draining the enemy completely dry through her vampiric botanical abilities. The god's eye remains visible between the tangled mass of constraining vines, and she calls Thorn naive for thinking this simple strategy could actually work against a divine being. A bright orb of energy suddenly materializes from the exact location where the severed head rests, completely surprising Thorn with this unexpected development. The radiant ball rapidly grows larger and more intense, and Thorn desperately tries to hold it back through sheer force of will. Soon enough, she becomes completely engulfed by the brilliant, overwhelming light. Once the blinding illumination finally disappears, the god is transformed into its true divine physique, revealing a nightmarish form covered with numerous eyes, mouths, and writhing tentacles that defies human comprehension. Cosmic horror mode unlocked. Tentacles wave menacingly through the air while countless more writhe and move as if they constitute the god's entire body structure in this nightmarish transformation. From the thick smoke surrounding the battlefield, vines suddenly shoot out with deadly precision, all aimed directly at the divine monstrosity before them. The god shouts from its main mouth, which is lined with razor-sharp teeth, declaring that she absolutely will not allow Thorn to ambush her repeatedly while continuing to speak condescendingly about her supposed naivety and combat tactics. Thorn materializes from behind the god with perfect stealth, calmly informing her enemy that she's about to be very disappointed with what comes next. Without hesitation, she sends her razor-sharp thorns flying forward to stab the god directly in the back, demonstrating that ambush tactics are exactly what she plans to continue using. Vines shoot out from the god's gaping mouth as it laughs mockingly at Thorn. asking if this basic stabbing maneuver represents the only combat technique she actually knows how to execute. The enemy's yellow eyes suddenly light up with supernatural energy, rapidly changing into a bright purple color that signals an incoming devastating attack. Stunned by this unexpected transformation, Thorn gets hit by numerous concentrated rays of energy that shoot directly from the god's multiple eyes with overwhelming force, causing her to cough up blood from the impact damage. But her determination remains unshaken as she continues fighting back with her signature vine-based assault techniques. Purple eyes mean business time. Thorn successfully wraps her vines around the enemy despite the massive size of the god's current divine physique, proving that raw determination can overcome significant size disadvantages. Some of her vines even manage to enter the god's mouth and wrap around the interior, creating an internal assault that should cause serious damage to any normal opponent. Brilliant rays of light flash outward from the god's body in direct retaliation against Thorn's aggressive vine attack, demonstrating that this abomination possesses multiple defensive capabilities. Several of the energy rays connect with Thorn, causing visible damage to her form, but she remains absolutely determined to drain her enemy dry through her vampiric botanical abilities regardless of the personal cost. The foe laughs with genuine amusement as she continues blasting concentrated energy rays in all directions, mockingly reminding Thorn that vine attacks appear to be the only combat strategy she actually understands. One of Thorn's vines manages to wrap around the location where the god's main eye connects to its body, but the cost of this minor victory becomes immediately apparent. An entire arm, leg, and significant portion of Thorn's waist have already disappeared due to the devastating power of her opponent's relentless, energy-based counterattacks. With a threatening declaration, the god releases something powerful and mysterious from the depths of its mouth, creating an attack that wraps around Thorn and begins encircling her from every possible direction. The god commands Thorn to become completely wrapped in her holy rays of light, which sounds like the most terrifying religious experience imaginable. The attack trapping Thorn brightens dramatically, and energy begins building up within the containment field with ominous intensity. The ball of concentrated light becomes so incredibly bright that it makes all the surrounding areas appear darker by comparison, and the radiant sphere begins shrinking down to a much smaller size. At the god's command for Thorn to return to complete nihility, the brilliant light disappears entirely into nothing more than a thin line before vanishing altogether. The enemy laughs triumphantly out loud, absolutely certain that victory has finally been achieved through this ultimate technique. Boss just went nuclear. Suddenly, blood begins splashing violently from the god's eyes in a completely unexpected turn of events, occurring simultaneously to all of the god's numerous eyes scattered across his divine form and creating a scene of absolute chaos. She coughs up increasing amounts of blood as more and more continues splashing from her ocular organs without any apparent explanation. The god expresses complete confusion about why she's experiencing these symptoms and why her blood appears to be boiling from within her own body. The enemy has absolutely no understanding of what Thorn managed to do to her during their confrontation, and the situation has deteriorated to the point where she's actively losing her spirit power at an alarming rate. The abomination continues bleeding profusely, while cursing at her own carelessness and underestimating her opponent's true capabilities. She realizes with growing panic that death will be inevitable if this mysterious condition continues, and decides that abandoning her current physical form represents the only viable option for survival. Suddenly, the god's massive physique begins expanding rapidly like an overinflated balloon before exploding in a spectacular display of divine destruction that shakes the entire battlefield. A small portion of its body, containing the concentrated essence of its consciousness, crashes down to the ground as the only remaining piece of this once mighty form. All that remains of the god's physical presence consists of a sharp-toothed mouth, 3 eyes, and several writhing tentacles attached to this miniaturized version. With the majority of her spirit power successfully drained by Thorn's mysterious technique, the diminished god curses bitterly at her botanical opponent while contemplating the humiliation she's just experienced. The god's thoughts turn to another powerful being who will undoubtedly mock her mercilessly if he ever learns about what transpired during this embarrassing defeat. Despite her drastically reduced circumstances, the foe floats in the air while thinking that a technical victory still counts as a legitimate win in the grand scheme of things. She begins deciding which opponent she should eliminate next when a vine suddenly appears out of nowhere, stabbing directly at her small, vulnerable form with lethal intent. The god becomes completely stunned by this unexpected assault that she failed to detect in advance. From the pool of blood scattered across the battlefield, multiple vines begin emerging with supernatural persistence before rising upward, and soon Thorn herself appears completely intact, showing absolutely no trace of her previous injuries or the supposed fatal attack she endured. The god stares in complete surprise that Thorn survived what should have been certain death, utterly confused about how she managed to remain alive after being subjected to such overwhelming divine power. Around Thorn's position, additional bodies begin rising from the blood-soaked ground, and the god suddenly realizes with growing horror that these are perfect clones of her opponent. Confused and increasingly desperate, she demands an explanation for how this impossible resurrection occurred when she was certain of achieving complete victory. Thorn responds with calm confidence, explaining that she was never actually attempting to drain the god's blood through conventional vampiric means as everyone assumed. Instead, she reveals that she was strategically injecting her own blood into the god's circulatory system with the specific intention of destroying her enemy from within through biological warfare. Biological warfare is terrifying. Thorn acknowledges that the god possesses outrageously powerful abilities, but points out that she also made the critical mistake of looking down on her opponent's intelligence and tactical creativity. Though the god holds the impressive rank of Transcendent Fifth Order, Thorn reminds her that this elevated status doesn't automatically make her invincible against clever strategies and unconventional attack methods that exploit fundamental weaknesses in divine physiology. The god opens her mouth wide while commanding Thorn to approach for a final confrontation, then immediately snaps her jaws shut in an attempt to bite her opponent in half. Thorn successfully evades this desperate attack, and the missed bite creates such tremendous force that it blasts away significant portions of the surrounding ground. The god declares that losing her physical body doesn't matter because she still retains the formidable power of a transcendent Fourth Order being. Countless vines wrap around the god's remaining miniaturized body as Thorn and her army of clones completely surround their enemy, binding her thoroughly with an inescapable network of botanical restraints. The god laughs maniacally while declaring that killing her will prove useless in the long run, because her death will only serve to make the other gods stronger through some unknown divine mechanism. She continues laughing out loud even as Thorn methodically squeezes her into absolute nothingness, refusing to show fear even in her final moments, defiant to the bitter end. Thorn stands triumphantly before the god wrapped tightly in her deadly vines, but victory comes at a devastating personal cost that becomes immediately apparent to anyone observing her current condition. She suddenly staggers backward as overwhelming fatigue crashes into her like a tidal wave, her body finally acknowledging the brutal toll of this intense divine battle that pushed her far beyond normal limits. There's barely enough blood left coursing through her veins to keep her conscious, and every fiber of her being desperately wants nothing more than to collapse and rest for several days straight. However, she also knows with absolute certainty that she must force herself to move and help the others who are still locked in their own life or death struggles against equally powerful enemies across multiple battlefields. Victory tastes like exhaustion. Back at the Black Pillar in that contested area, massive flames erupt violently at its towering peak, while the relentless army of Rat Emperors continues their fierce battle against various enemy beasts down below on the blood-soaked ground. Lang Feng slides across the smooth surface of the pillar's exterior with practiced precision, though his movements show clear signs of the cumulative damage he sustained during this prolonged and brutal confrontation. He coughs up fresh blood while King Gang summons his colossal giant earth form to engage the grotesque-looking enemy god in direct physical combat, preparing for what could be their final stand. King Gang releases a primal scream as he launches his attack against the divine opponent using his massive earthly hand, demonstrating the raw power that comes with his elemental transformation abilities. With tremendous force that shakes the entire battlefield, he manages to push the god's head down toward the ground, temporarily gaining the upper hand in this brutal exchange of devastating attacks. Concentrated balls of brilliant light suddenly materialize directly before the god's multiple eyes and shoot forth with lethal precision at King Gang's earth construct, moving faster than the human eye can track. The devastating energy attack completely destroys his giant earth body, reducing it to scattered debris and forcing him to regenerate the entire form using his elemental powers while enduring excruciating pain. Earth versus divine lasers. At the exact same moment, Lang Feng materializes an enormous dark energy blade that pulses with malevolent power and launches it directly toward the enemy's face with deadly intent and perfect timing. The god immediately fights back by blasting a concentrated bright ray of light from the depths of its cavernous mouth, creating a collision of opposing energies that shakes the entire battlefield and sends shockwaves through the surrounding area. Lang Feng somehow manages to survive the overwhelming divine attack through sheer determination and tactical positioning, while King Gang's protective earth element forms a defensive barrier around both of them to shield against the residual energy. Frowning with obvious concern and growing frustration about their deteriorating situation, Lang Feng shouts about their opponent's incredible strength, acknowledging that they're severely outmatched in this confrontation and may not survive much longer. Outclassed, but not outfought. A ray of mysterious energy suddenly appears from behind their position, causing both warriors to look up in surprise and confusion at this unexpected development. The energy shoots directly toward the god they're currently fighting, and upon impact, something extraordinary and terrifying occurs that changes the entire dynamic of their battle. The god realizes with obvious delight that he has just absorbed Number 12's spirit power, which can only mean that she has been killed in battle somewhere else on a distant battlefield. The divine being laughs with genuine glee, finding this development absolutely awesome for his own power enhancement and strategic advantage. Divine level up system engaged. Lang Feng and King Gang watch their enemy with growing horror, clearly observing the dramatic increase in the god's already formidable spirit power as it flows into his divine form. The god then reveals crucial information about divine mechanics that changes everything about their understanding of this war. When any god perishes in battle, the deceased god's accumulated spirit power gets automatically distributed among all the remaining living gods, only serving to make them exponentially stronger with each fallen ally. Power redistribution is broken. Both Lang Feng and King Gang express complete surprise and mounting frustration upon learning that their fight just became significantly more difficult than it already was. The enemy god smugly declares that everything will be different now that he represents an evolved version of his former self, possessing capabilities far beyond what they previously faced. In the second city's battlefield, Kangaroo charges forward with desperate determination, his right hand completely covered in swirling dark energy that represents his signature combat technique and possibly his last hope for victory. Do-mu observes this approach with casual confidence and declares that Kangaroo will definitely gain some new permanent scars from this encounter, showing zero concern about the incoming attack. Injured and bleeding from multiple wounds sustained throughout this brutal confrontation, Kangaroo shouts with raw emotion about how everyone else has died except for the fox, revealing the devastating losses his team has suffered during this war. Suddenly, another ray of divine power shoots directly toward Do-mu's position, striking the god of war and causing visible changes to his physical form. Do-mu looks down his own body with satisfaction as he absorbs this new surge of power, feeling his capabilities expand dramatically. Kangaroo stares in complete confusion, unable to understand how Do-mu keeps getting stronger during their battle, and logic dictates that prolonged fighting should weaken opponents. Do-mu launches himself from his current position with such tremendous force that he leaves a deep permanent mark carved into the solid ground beneath his feet, demonstrating power that defies natural laws. He moves with supernatural speed and appears directly behind Kangaroo in what seems like an impossible teleportation maneuver, but Kangaroo realizes the danger far too late to mount any effective defense against this overwhelming assault. Do-mu attacks with a devastating swing of his muscular arm, connecting solidly with Kangaroo's face and sending him reeling backward from the tremendous impact that echoes across the battlefield. Teleportation beats everything. Kangaroo's eyes suffer serious damage from the brutal attack, blood streaming down his face as his vision becomes compromised by the divine assault. Not yet satisfied with this level of destruction, Do-mu casually grabs Kangaroo's tail and swings him toward the ground with such effortless ease that it demonstrates the vast power difference between them. With cold determination, Do-mu announces his future plans, stating that once he finishes completely destroying Kangaroo, he'll head straight to the divine tree to finally get his long-awaited revenge. This declaration triggers an explosive surge of anger within Kangaroo, who curses furiously at Do-mu while unleashing every bit of dark energy he can muster from his battered form. Do-mu doesn't even bother moving to avoid the attack, standing perfectly still with absolute confidence in his defensive capabilities. Kangaroo's desperate punch connects directly with Do-mu's face, and he feels a moment of surprise that his attack actually made contact with the divine target. Do-mu continues standing exactly where he was, completely unmoved and unharmed, as if absolutely nothing significant had occurred during Kangaroo's full power assault. Do-mu snickers with genuine amusement at this pathetic display and slowly pulls back his left arm in preparation for a devastating counterattack. He recalls with bitter satisfaction how he previously couldn't manage to leave a hole in the divine tree during their last encounter, but this time will be completely different since he's about to leave a permanent hole directly through Kangaroo's body. Do-mu launches his retaliatory attack with overwhelming force, striking Kangaroo with such devastating power that it makes him cough up massive amounts of blood. Despite the severe internal damage, Kangaroo manages to grab Do-mu's attacking arm with both of his hands, surprising the god with this unexpected defensive maneuver. Though bleeding profusely from multiple wounds, Kangaroo shouts with his remaining strength that he'll leave everything important to the other fighter, making a clear reference to backup that's about to arrive. This statement causes Do-mu to look upward with sudden concern, and from high above their position, he discovers Bull Demon descending with his enormous battle axe raised for a devastating strike that could change everything. Bull Demon releases a thunderous battle cry and attacks Do-mu with tremendous force, creating a massive explosion that engulfs the entire area in thick smoke and scattered debris. As the thick dust begins settling around the impact zone, electricity begins crackling visibly from Bull Demon's powerful body, indicating that this new combatant possesses electrical-based abilities that could prove decisive in this conflict. Thunder God enters the chat. The massive explosion on top of the Black Pillar creates a spectacular display that can be easily seen from incredible distances across the battlefield, serving as a beacon of destruction that alerts everyone to the intensity of this divine confrontation. Kangaroo slides across the ground due to the tremendous impact from the blast, his body struggling to maintain balance after being caught in a shockwave of Bull Demon's devastating attack. He grits his teeth with visible determination as he glares at the chaotic scene unfolding before him, witnessing what could be the turning point of this entire war. Bull Demon now stands triumphantly before Do-mu, who has been forced down to his knees in a humiliating display of defeated divine power. There are clearly visible cracks spreading across Do-mu's head like a broken sculpture, revealing that even gods can suffer serious physical damage when faced with overwhelming force. Bull Demon expresses his exasperation that Do-mu has returned to cause more trouble, advising the fallen god to show some appreciation for his own life and retreat while he still can. Gravity just schooled a god. Do-mu responds to this reasonable suggestion by laughing loudly with maniacal intensity, claiming that he's returned to this battlefield specifically to get his long-awaited revenge against those who wronged him. He declares with burning hatred that he'll set this entire place ablaze, and if he can't possess it for himself, then absolutely no one else will be allowed to have it either. Do-mu shouts with increasing fury that he'll personally bring their severed heads to the divine tree as trophies of his victory. Bull Demon raises one hand with casual confidence, and Do-mu suddenly expresses surprise at the unexpected pressure that begins pressing him down toward the ground with invisible force. Do-mu quickly realizes that his formidable opponent is wielding gravitational manipulation abilities, which represents a completely different type of power than anything he's encountered before. Bull Demon calmly states that Do-mu can only think about taking their heads after he manages to defeat them in direct combat, which seems increasingly unlikely given his current disadvantaged position. Do-mu charges forward with desperate determination, declaring that defeating them is exactly what he intends to accomplish regardless of the obstacles in his path. Kangaroo watches in complete surprise that Do-mu can still move and attack despite the crushing pressure of gravity weighing him down, demonstrating the incredible resilience that comes with divine physiology. Before Do-mu's frenzied attack can even reach its intended target, Bull Demon calmly increases the gravitational force to 30% of normal intensity. Physics beats divine rage. This dramatic increase in gravitational pressure immediately stops Do-mu's charge in its tracks, making the god of war suddenly crash face first to the ground with tremendous force that creates a small crater beneath him. He shouts in frustration and growing panic about how the gravity continues getting stronger and more oppressive, making movement increasingly difficult with each passing moment. Bull Demon mocks Do-mu's pathetic situation with obvious satisfaction, pointing out that even a supposedly mighty god can be brought down to his knees when faced with the right type of overwhelming power. Do-mu looks upward with visible frustration and growing desperation, realizing that his usual combat strategies are completely ineffective against this particular opponent's unique abilities. Bull Demon delivers a devastating punch that sends Do-mu crashing even deeper into the ground, creating cracks that spread outward from the impact point like a spider web of destruction. The tremendous impact of this attack generates such powerful shockwaves that it sends a strong gust of wind across the entire battlefield, making even Kangaroo groan from the residual effects despite his considerable distance from the actual confrontation. Bull Demon raises his massive battle axe high above his head and releases a thunderous battle cry as he prepares to bring it down on their enemy with lethal intent, aiming to end this fight permanently. A clawed hand suddenly appears from the thick smoke below Bull Demon's position, preparing to launch a surprise counterattack that catches him completely off guard. He expresses genuine surprise as an energy sphere begins forming and rapidly growing larger in the mysterious attacker's grasp. The concentrated energy suddenly shoots upward with tremendous velocity, narrowly missing Bull Demon's head by mere inches and demonstrating that Do-mu still possesses considerable fighting capability. Another energy sphere materializes almost immediately, and soon the entire surrounding space becomes filled with numerous large crackling energy projectiles. All while Do-mu floats ominously in the center of this deadly formation like the eye of a supernatural storm. Bull Demon lifts his enormous axe with both hands as purple energy begins gathering around the weapon's blade, preparing for what appears to be his ultimate technique. Energy sphere spam incoming. Do-mu shouts with renewed confidence as he directs his coordinated attack toward Bull Demon's position, launching multiple energy projectiles simultaneously in a devastating barrage. Bull Demon responds with his own battle cry and swings his energy-enhanced axe at the approaching assault with perfect timing and incredible force. His powerful swing sends the first energy sphere bouncing directly back toward Do-mu, who stares in complete surprise that his attack was not only blocked but completely reversed. Bull Demon continues this defensive strategy by hitting each subsequent energy projectile thrown at him, sending them all flying back toward Do-mu with even greater force than their original trajectory. The collision of all these redirected energy attacks creates a massive explosion that engulfs the entire area in brilliant light and tremendous destructive force that can be felt across multiple city blocks. Kangaroo desperately protects himself from the devastating aftermath of this explosion, staring in complete awe at just how powerful the combined attack turned out to be when all that energy was concentrated into a single point. From a considerable distance away, observers can clearly see that the explosion has already transformed into a massive cloud of thick smoke that hovers ominously just above the black pillar like a miniature mushroom cloud. Bull Demon watches the settling smoke with cautious attention as a voice speaks from within the destruction, expressing amazement at the deep wound that has been left on Do-mu's previously invulnerable body. Do-mu offers genuine compliments to Bull Demon from his position within the smoke, acknowledging that his opponent is significantly stronger than the pathetic Kangaroo who failed so miserably in their earlier confrontation. Kangaroo glares with obvious offense at this insulting comparison, while simultaneously expressing surprise that Do-mu managed to survive such a devastating combined attack that should have been lethal to most beings. Bull Demon shouts his full name and proudly announces his status as the second great beast of the legendary Misty Mountain, establishing his credentials and power level for all present to understand. Mountain Beast Hierarchy revealed. Do-mu picks up a nearby rock as he claims to be a legitimate god of this world, possessing authority and power that transcends mortal understanding. Destroying the rock with casual ease to demonstrate his continued strength, he announces that he holds the 7th position in the official gods ranking system and reveals that his accumulated power is almost sufficient to reach the prestigious 6th rank. Bull Demon carefully observes how Do-mu's physical appearance has undergone another dramatic transformation, indicating that the god possesses multiple evolutionary forms that become available during intense combat situations. Do-mu creates a formidable weapon constructed entirely from pure energy and points it directly at Bull Demon with threatening intent, commenting that their only real similarity lies in the fact that they both prefer wielding axes as their primary weapons. He issues a formal invitation for Bull Demon to engage in another round of combat, clearly eager to test his newly enhanced capabilities. Bull Demon accepts this challenge by leaping high into the air and swinging his massive axe downward at Do-Mu's position with tremendous force and perfect accuracy. Their two axes clash together in a spectacular collision that sends shockwaves throughout the surrounding area and creates sparks that illuminate the battlefield. Bull Demon immediately activates 40% gravitational intensity, making the entire area around their confrontation shudder under the intense pressure that would crush most ordinary beings. Do-Mu simply attacks back with renewed vigor and confidence, making Bull Demon wonder with growing concern if the gravitational effects have somehow become completely useless against his evolved form. Do-Mu expresses genuine amazement that Bull Demon possesses such incredible power despite being only at the early stage of the transcendent 5th order ranking system. He extends his hand in an unexpected gesture, asking Bull Demon to consider becoming his subordinate instead of continuing this destructive conflict. Job offer mid-battle. The battlefield experiences a momentary calm as the dust settles from the previous explosive exchange, creating an eerie pause in what has been an absolutely brutal confrontation between divine and mortal forces. Bull Demon shouts with obvious offense, asking if Do-Mu is seriously trying to humiliate him by offering subordination, clearly not taking the god's recruitment proposal in any positive light whatsoever. With crackling energy dancing along his massive axe, he speaks with growing frustration about how 40% gravity appears to be completely useless against Do-Mu's evolved divine form. The god expresses genuine surprise at this outright rejection of what he considered a generous offer. Bull Demon announces with grim determination that he'll simply increase his gravitational manipulation skills' overall strength to overcome this resistance. The gravitational intensity dramatically increases from 40% to a crushing 70%, creating an oppressive atmosphere that intensifies the pressure around them to levels that would instantly flatten most living beings. Bull Demon declares his clear intention to completely crush Do-Mu beneath the weight of his enhanced gravitational field, leaving no room for escape or negotiation. Gravity dial turned to 11. A vivid memory suddenly appears in Bull Demon's mind, transporting him back to happier times in his homeland during a period of peace and recovery. The memory shows Honey Badger carefully pouring life essence onto Golden Monkey's serious wound with gentle precision, demonstrating the deep care and brotherhood that exists among the creatures of Misty Mountain. Once the healing process was completed successfully, a legendary trio consisting of Golden Monkey, Honey Badger, and Wild Boar were once again lively and energetic, roaming freely through their beloved territory without fear or pain. During that peaceful time, Bull Demon had been engaged in a meaningful conversation with Emperor Crocodile about the trio's incredible resilience and their shared history of sacrifice. Emperor Crocodile spoke with deep emotion about how everyone had risked their lives to protect their cherished home, emphasizing that there's absolutely no other place like Misty Mountain in the entire world that deserves such unwavering loyalty and dedication. Bull Demon calls Emperor Crocodile the Sharp Blade of Misty Mountain, a title that makes his companion look at him with curious interest and obvious pride. Bull Demon continues this line of thought, acknowledging that their big sister Ninetails serves as the undisputed leader of that special place, commanding respect and admiration from all who dwell there. At those meaningful words, Bull Demon reflects deeply on his own role and responsibilities within their tight-knit community. Family bonds run deep. Returning to the present moment with renewed determination, a massive burst of concentrated energy lights up the entire battlefield with brilliant illumination that can be seen for miles. Do-Mu curses loudly at the continuously increasing pressure that threatens to crush him into the ground, struggling against forces that defy his divine nature. From his position on the side, Kangaroo continues watching this epic battle with growing amazement. Yet he finds himself still able to feel the gravitational suppression even though he remains completely outside of its direct area of effect. He clenches his teeth tightly at the thought of Misty Mountain's Bull Demon, pondering with genuine awe the unfathomable depths of power that his ally has already reached through years of dedicated training and natural talent. As Bull Demon continues applying relentless gravitational suppression against Do-Mu, the barbarian warriors below are still engaged in fierce combat against the red demons at the base of the towering black pillar. One barbarian suddenly senses how the air itself is getting noticeably thinner due to the intense gravitational effects occurring high above them. At the top of the pillar, Do-Mu recognizes with growing desperation that he absolutely must escape from Bull Demon's effective range, but discovers that even basic movement has become entirely difficult under such crushing gravitational pressure. A massive rock suddenly materializes directly above Do-Mu's position, making him shout in angry defiance at this additional threat to his safety. However, the enormous rock still falls directly onto him due to the intense gravitational force pulling everything downward with irresistible power. Suddenly, something swings through the air with incredible speed, leaving behind a swift energy trail that completely destroys the massive rock before it can cause serious damage. Bull Demon shouts with determination as he fights against this unexpected counterattack with his trusty axe, putting all of his strength into the defensive maneuver. His weapon begins developing visible cracks against the sheer overwhelming force of Do-Mu's attack, demonstrating that even the most durable equipment has its limits when faced with divine power. Axe versus divine energy. The brilliant energy trail created by the attack possesses such tremendous power that it successfully breaks through the entire area that Bull Demon's gravitational field covers, creating a temporary breach in his defensive strategy. The energy trail that escapes the gravitational domain quickly collects and reforms itself into a concentrated sphere of pure destructive power that hovers menacingly in the air. Domu's energy axe remains firmly in his grasp, still positioned within Bull Demon's gravitational domain despite the partial escape of his attack's energy. Domu grins with obvious satisfaction, commenting smugly on how Bull Demon's gravity isn't actually strong enough to affect pure light energy, revealing a crucial weakness in his opponent's otherwise overwhelming ability. He tells Bull Demon to examine himself more carefully for using such tremendously strong power, suggesting that the sustained effort mustn't be making him feel particularly good. Domu swings his energy axe with renewed confidence, declaring that they should discover whether Bull Demon can successfully flatten him before he manages to end this confrontation permanently. Bull Demon responds with a thunderous shout and hurls his physical axe with tremendous force, connecting directly with Domu's energy weapon in a spectacular collision. Bull Demon immediately transforms into his powerful beast physique and charges straight at Domu with unstoppable momentum, abandoning defense in favor of overwhelming offense. Domu coughs up fresh blood as the impact hits him, suddenly realizing with growing alarm how Bull Demon cleverly used gravitational manipulation to enhance his movement speed and transform his physical strike into something even more devastating than normal. He recognizes that he must end this battle immediately, knowing with absolute certainty that his spirit power consumption within this gravitational field is occurring far too rapidly for sustained combat. Speed plus gravity equals pain. Bull Demon suddenly shouts about his true identity with passionate intensity, completely surprising Domu with this unexpected declaration of purpose. Facing each other in what appears to be their final exchange, Bull Demon proudly declares that he serves as everyone's guardian, a protector of those who cannot protect themselves. Domu dismisses this noble sentiment with obvious disdain and raises his energy axe high into the air above his head, preparing for what he believes will be his ultimate technique. The energy axe dramatically increases in size until it becomes a colossal weapon of divine destruction. And Domu announces with tremendous pride that this particular skill successfully defeated the legendary Old White Dragon in single combat. He adds with growing confidence that this represents the exact same devastating technique that once went against Bull Demon's own master in an epic confrontation from the past. Kangaroo recognizes with growing horror how Domu's massive skill is beginning to affect Bull Demon's gravitational field, causing it to start dissipating around the edges and weakening his defensive advantage. He can only shout desperately for Bull Demon to dodge the incoming attack, knowing that a direct hit could prove fatal, even for someone of his incredible durability and power. The enormous energy axe begins its descent toward Bull Demon's beast form with the force of a falling mountain. But Bull Demon merely narrows his eyes with calm determination as he prepares to unleash his ultimate defensive technique. He activates his black hole skill with perfect timing, creating a gravitational anomaly that defies conventional understanding of physics and combat strategy. The concentrated spirit power from Domu's massive axe attack begins fluctuating wildly before being drawn inexorably toward the black hole's event horizon, where it gets completely absorbed despite its tremendous size and divine origin. Domu stares in absolute shock at what's happening to his supposedly unstoppable ultimate technique, unable to comprehend how his attack is simply disappearing into nothingness. Bull Demon reveals the true nature of his strategy with obvious satisfaction, explaining that his gravitational field didn't actually dissipate as it appeared to do. Instead, his black hole's concentrated gravitational force absorbs absolutely everything in its vicinity, including Domu's most powerful skill and all the energy it contained. The ground beneath his feet gets completely destroyed by the gravitational forces as Bull Demon cancels his beast transformation and delivers a devastating punch that penetrates directly through Domu's divine body with lethal precision. Black hole trumps everything. The crushing weight of gravitational pressure throughout the area makes absolutely everything in the vicinity shudder with uncontrollable tremors, creating an atmosphere of pure physical oppression that defies natural law. Bull Demon's massive fist remains lodged deep within Domu's chest cavity, with fresh divine blood steadily dripping onto the cracked ground below in a grim testament to the devastating effectiveness of his attack. Domu realizes with growing horror that all of his most powerful skills have been completely absorbed by the black hole technique, leaving him stripped of his greatest advantages in this life or death confrontation. Desperate and refusing to accept defeat, he shouts defiantly that he absolutely will not be conquered in mere hand-to-hand combat by a mortal being. Divine pride versus reality. Domu immediately follows up his declaration by throwing a powerful punch directly at Bull Demon's face, demonstrating that his physical capabilities remain formidable even without his supernatural abilities. Bull Demon responds by pulling back his embedded fist and gathering concentrated power within it, preparing for another devastating strike against his divine opponent. He launches his punch at Domu with tremendous force that sends shockwaves throughout the immediate area, causing the god to cough up additional blood from the internal damage. Domu quickly retaliates by employing his god's fist technique against Bull Demon, but despite this divine counterattack, Bull Demon maintains his gravitational manipulation to continue pressuring his increasingly injured enemy. Domu responds to this relentless assault by laughing with manic intensity, actually encouraging Bull Demon to employ his absolute full strength with unwavering conviction if he truly intends to take his divine life. He shouts with obvious mockery that Bull Demon must use significantly greater power than what he's currently unleashing. suggesting that only by doing so will Bull Demon prove himself worthy of holding the prestigious title of second great beast of Misty Mountain. Bull Demon clenches his teeth with visible frustration, internally acknowledging that he has already enveloped the entire combat area with an overwhelming 80% gravitational intensity. He struggles to believe that Do-Mu remains barely affected by such crushing force, particularly considering that his black hole skill only managed to seal away some of Do-Mu's abilities rather than completely neutralizing the divine threat. Bull Demon desperately searches for alternative strategies to defeat his seemingly indestructible opponent, recognizing with growing concern that very little spirit power remains within his exhausted body. He contemplates with mounting anxiety exactly how much longer he can maintain this level of intensive combat before his reserves become completely depleted, running on fumes now. Bull Demon forces himself to clench his fist tighter while gathering the remaining energy available to him, knowing with absolute certainty that he cannot afford to waste precious time on hypothetical scenarios or wishful thinking. His determination intensifies dramatically as he prepares to challenge Do-Mu in purely physical hand-to-hand combat, relying on raw strength and combat experience rather than supernatural abilities. Do-Mu welcomes this straightforward challenge with obvious enthusiasm, unleashing his own fiery divine power to meet Bull Demon's assault head-on in a spectacular display of opposing forces. The two formidable warriors face each other with unwavering resolve, exchanging numerous devastating punches in rapid succession that create visible damage to both combatants. Their intense physical confrontation generates a swirling vortex of their combined energies mixing together in chaotic patterns that illuminate the entire battlefield. Kangaroo manages to maintain his position despite the oppressive gravitational pressure and shouts encouragement for Bull Demon to achieve victory over the divine threat. Bull Demon coughs up blood from the accumulated damage he's sustained, but demonstrates his incredible willpower by increasing the gravitational intensity to a crushing 90% that would instantly flatten most living beings. He delivers a punch with such tremendous raw strength that it creates a gaping hole directly through Do-Mu's upper arm, causing the entire appendage to detach cleanly from the god's body and fall to the ground with a sickening impact. Do-Mu responds to this grievous injury by shouting with genuine excitement about how a proper fight should unfold, revealing his twisted appreciation for violence and destruction. He declares with manic enthusiasm that he specifically became the god of war for the explicit purpose of experiencing exactly this type of life-threatening combat scenario. Do-Mu immediately counterattacks using his god's fist technique with renewed fury, striking Bull Demon with such devastating force that it destroys nearly half of his opponent's waist area in a shower of blood and torn flesh. Divine masochism at work. Bull Demon continues fighting back with remarkable resilience despite the severe damage to his torso, refusing to surrender even when faced with potentially fatal injuries. Do-Mu expresses genuine surprise that Bull Demon can still maintain combat effectiveness under such circumstances, wondering aloud if his opponent possesses some form of undying body that prevents normal death from occurring. Bull Demon faces him with unwavering determination while Do-Mu remains in visible shock at his opponent's supernatural endurance, bleeding profusely but never losing focus on his ultimate objective. Bull Demon's thoughts turn to his sacred role as Misty Mountain's guardian, remembering his solemn vow to protect those who depend on him for their safety and security. He reflects with deep emotion on how he never wants anyone else to experience the kind of devastating suffering that permanently separates loved ones through the finality of death, drawing strength from this noble purpose to continue fighting beyond his physical limits. Bull Demon channels his remaining power to employ 110% gravitational intensity and a single devastating punch aimed directly at Do-Mu's stomach area, pushing his abilities far beyond their normal safe operating parameters. He immediately follows up with another strike, utilizing 120% gravity, accepting the dangerous strain on his own body to achieve maximum destructive potential. Bull Demon releases a thunderous battle cry as he pulls back his fist for what he intends to be his ultimate technique, preparing to unleash his supergravity punch with everything he has left. He shouts his absolute determination that he will not allow Do-Mu to leave this battlefield alive, knowing with complete certainty that the god will continue systematically eliminating his friends and family if given the opportunity to escape. Bull Demon declares his intention to end Do-Mu permanently in this location and delivers his final punch with overwhelming force that causes the god to cough up massive quantities of blood. Guardian's final stand. Understanding that he must protect everyone he cares about regardless of the personal cost, Bull Demon releases another battle cry as he drives Do-Mu down toward the ground with such tremendous force that it completely destroys the surface they've been fighting on, creating a massive crater that extends deep into the pillar's foundation. From his distant observation point, Kangaroo finds himself forced to kneel on one knee as he continues watching this epic confrontation unfold, his body unable to fully withstand the residual gravitational effects. Thick smoke obscures his vision of the impact zone, but soon Bull Demon emerges from the destruction with Do-Mu's battered form held aloft in one powerful hand like a trophy of victory. Kangaroo shouts with obvious relief and admiration at how Bull Demon managed to achieve victory against seemingly impossible odds. Do-Mu demonstrates his incredible divine resilience by continuing to laugh even in his thoroughly defeated state, looking down at Bull Demon with a mixture of respect and defiance. He claims with his remaining strength that Bull Demon cannot truly handle him since his own vitality is already burning out from the tremendous exertion required to achieve this victory. Bull Demon dismisses this observation entirely and activates his gravitational abilities directly on Do-Mu's captured form, causing the god of war's body to shudder violently under the crushing pressure of having his divine flesh systematically compressed. His remaining arm undergoes the horrifying process of being flattened into absolute nothingness, demonstrating the ultimate power of concentrated gravitational force when applied with lethal intent. Bull Demon delivers a philosophical observation, reminding Do-Mu that every living organism throughout the universe will eventually meet its inevitable end, and even supposedly immortal gods represent no exception to this fundamental rule of existence. Do-Mu's entire body undergoes systematic compression as he speaks with grudging admiration about how he never anticipated meeting his final end at the hands of someone like Bull Demon, acknowledging his opponent's unexpected strength and determination. Soon, the mighty god of war becomes completely compressed into nothingness, leaving behind only a crimson trail of blood as evidence of his former divine existence. Bull Demon huffs with exhaustion while realizing the magnitude in what he has accomplished, acknowledging that he has successfully defeated an actual god through determination, strategy, and sheer force of will. The massive black pillar beneath their feet now displays significant structural damage in the form of deep cracks running throughout its surface, serving as permanent evidence of their earth-shaking battle. Bull Demon, 1. Gods, 0. Bull Demon discovers that his massive battle axe has become lodged deep within the cracked ground beneath his feet, a testament to the tremendous force of his final devastating attack against the god of war. Bleeding profusely from multiple wounds sustained during his epic confrontation, he almost staggers under the weight of his accumulated injuries and the tremendous strain from maintaining such intense gravitational fields. Bull Demon grips his axe tighter, teeth gritted. Despite the exhaustion weighing down on him, his will burns brighter than ever before, and he won't fall now, not when victory is within reach. Kangaroo appears at his side with perfect timing and gently nudges him to maintain his balance, offering genuine compliments for facing such an overwhelming divine challenge with unwavering courage. The teleportation gate suddenly lights up with magical energy, and Ada appears with her wings visibly battered from recent combat, but her determination remaining absolutely unwavering. She reassures them she can still fly and must get critical info to the others, urging them to stay and stabilize things while she handles the urgent communication mission. She immediately prepares to fly off again, knowing that every second counts in coordinating their defensive efforts across multiple battlefields. Wounded Messenger never rests. Bull Demon grabs hold of his embedded axe with determination, drawing upon his remaining reserves of strength to continue fighting despite his depleted condition. Exuding tremendous residual power that radiates outward from his position, he raises his formidable weapon high above his head in a display that immediately catches the attention of every red demon positioned below at the pillar's base. The demonic forces stumble forward with sluggish movements as the weight of Bull Demon's gravitational field presses down on them with crushing force, their screams of frustration becoming drowned by the oppressive gravitational pull that makes their ascent increasingly difficult with each struggling step. Bull Demon looks back at Kangaroo with obvious concern for his ally's safety, telling him in no uncertain terms to evacuate the immediate area or risk getting caught in the massive destruction he's about to unleash. Kangaroo carefully weighs this warning while recognizing the wisdom in Bull Demon's tactical assessment, turning to retreat while shouting that Bull Demon absolutely must return alive from whatever he's planning to do. At that exact same moment, Do-Mu's surviving minions release thunderous roars as they finally reach the top of the pillar, gathering together in a coordinated formation with the clear intention of overwhelming Bull Demon through sheer numbers. Bull Demon shouts for all the demonic forces to fall along with the tower they've been using as their strategic stronghold, then brings down his massive axe with devastating force. A defeating roar erupts as the weapon connects, and the pillar cracks and crumbles while sending shockwaves that tear through the battlefield with tremendous destructive power. At such close range, the red demons find themselves completely caught within the attack's radius, unable to escape the overwhelming assault. Master of destruction. The great explosion continues expanding and destroying everything in its path as smoke fills the air and enormous boulders crash to the ground with earth-shaking impacts. With quiet satisfaction, Bull Demon prepares to leave the rest of the war in the capable hands of his comrades while kneeling with his axe planted before him. The city faces unprecedented destruction as the black pillars collapse send shockwaves throughout the entire urban area. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, something green shoots downward toward the ground with incredible velocity in another crucial engagement of this multi-front war. In his specialized battle form, the Mantis warrior Celine faces off against a formidable tentacle beast that represents yet another divine threat to their survival. Celine releases a battle cry and charges forward at absolutely astounding speed toward his enemy, moving so fast that he becomes little more than a green blur of deadly intent. The tremendous impact of his assault creates a brilliant green explosion that erupts directly at the enemy's face, demonstrating incredible power from his enhanced combat form. However, despite the spectacular display of force, Celine's attack fails completely, and his razor-sharp stinger hand shatters against the enemy's impenetrable tentacles. Celine stares at his shattered stinger in disbelief, his mind racing. This should have worked, so why didn't it penetrate the defenses? The God of Matter sneers down at Celine, his voice dripping with disdain and obvious superiority. He reveals that his entire body consists of the hardest element found anywhere on their planet, declaring with smug confidence that nothing in existence can break through his defenses. Among all 12 gods in their pantheon, he possesses the strongest defensive capabilities by far, making victory against him nearly impossible. The enemy formally introduces himself as the God of Matter, establishing his credentials as a divine being focused on absolute invulnerability, unbreakable defenses. Siglin shouts his unwavering belief in eventual victory as a flash of green energy appears suddenly on his right side, moving with such speed and power that it grazes him and almost completely destroys his physical form. Siglin groans in pain while recalling a crucial conversation with the divine tree, remembering the important question about how he planned to keep up with Flash's incredible speed while remaining in his current weakened state. Siglin declares with renewed determination that he has already grown significantly stronger through training and experience, proudly stating that he's no longer the weak fighter he once was. His form flickers and begins crackling with intense green energy as the very air shudders around him, his spirit power swelling and coalescing into a violent aura of raw strength that creates a visible formation diverging at both ends. The Matter God expresses genuine surprise at witnessing how the Mantis warrior's spirit power continues increasing beyond what should be possible for his rank. Siglin releases another battle cry as he charges forward with everything he has, forcing the God of Matter to realize with growing alarm that this situation has become genuinely dangerous for him. He raises multiple tentacles in a desperate defensive formation, hoping to absorb or deflect the incoming assault that threatens to overwhelm his previously impenetrable defenses. Siglin connects with his target and unleashes such a tremendous amount of concentrated power that the resulting explosion can be easily observed from incredible distances across the battlefield. Two of the Matter God's supposedly indestructible tentacles are completely severed by the attack, causing his eyes to bulge in absolute confusion and disbelief at what just occurred. The tremendous impact of Siglin's enhanced assault destroys a significant portion of the ground they're fighting on, creating a crater that demonstrates the massive increase in his combat capabilities. Siglin shouts triumphantly as the thick smoke from his successful attack begins dissipating around his victorious form, revealing the extent of damage he's managed to inflict on a supposedly invincible divine opponent. Mantis just leveled up hard. The Mantis warrior has successfully managed to cut off several of the God of Matter's supposedly indestructible tentacles, leaving the divine being still reeling with complete disbelief at how his impenetrable body could possibly be sliced through by a mortal opponent. Siglin's confidence surges after cutting off several tentacles that were thought to be indestructible, and he releases a thunderous battle cry that echoes across the battlefield, proving that even gods can bleed when faced with sufficient determination and evolved power. The Matter God raises his remaining tentacles defensively while commenting with grudging respect on the remarkable sharpness of his opponent's blade, clearly recognizing that he's dealing with something far beyond ordinary combat capabilities. He attempts to catch the elusive Mantis with a coordinated tentacle strike, but Siglin suddenly vanishes with supernatural speed, retreating through the void itself. The God of Matter expresses genuine surprise at witnessing how the Mantis has disappeared using spatial manipulation abilities that he didn't expect from such a seemingly basic opponent. Teleportation beats tentacles. Without warning, Siglin materializes directly behind the Matter God's massive form and launches a devastating surprise attack that connects with perfect precision. The unexpected assault hits its target, causing the God of Matter to stagger backward in shock as he discovers a fresh injury on his previously untouchable leg. Siglin immediately disappears again in a brilliant flash and reappears to attack the god from a completely different angle, demonstrating mastery over hit-and-run tactics. He repeats this teleportation assault pattern numerous times, effectively trapping the god within a confined space where escape becomes impossible, making the divine enemy bleed profusely and cough up divine ichor. Siglin turns with incredible speed and heads straight toward the God of Matter once again, preparing for what appears to be his finishing move. He shouts with renewed vigor and determination while the enemy god mocks him dismissively, claiming that the Mantis should not feel proud of merely cutting off a few expendable tentacles. Suddenly, the God of Matter emits a bright circle of light that creates an impenetrable barrier, successfully stopping Siglin's incoming attack in its tracks. A massive burst of raw spirit power erupts from the defensive technique, causing extensive damage to the surrounding ground and creating a crater that demonstrates the god's true capabilities. As the blinding light and thick smoke gradually disappear from the impact zone, hardened tentacles become visible, revealing that the god has undergone another evolutionary transformation. One crystallized tentacle immediately stabs towards Siglin with lethal intent, while the God of Matter explains that he cannot hope to defeat the Mantis while remaining in his normal combat state. His form has undergone a drastic change, now featuring a massive red eye at the center of his massive tentacles, making his appearance all the more nightmarish. Divine Boss Transformation Mode. Siglin defiantly shouts that he hasn't been defeated yet, refusing to surrender despite the overwhelming odds stacked against him. A devastating tentacle strike tears through Siglin's right hand, reducing it to a mangled mess and leaving him severely handicapped in combat capabilities. The God of Matter begins collecting massive amounts of energy while announcing with cold satisfaction that he'll grant the Mantis a worthy death befitting a warrior through the use of his true god physique, preparing what appears to be his ultimate technique. The Matter God unleashes his concentrated attack directly at Siglin's position, causing the Mantis to curse as he realizes the full scope of the destructive power heading toward him. The enormous blast erupts with such tremendous force that it massively surpasses the edge of the black pillar they've been fighting on top of, creating destruction that can be observed from incredible distances. The devastating impact destroys significant portions of the black pillar's structure, proving that divine techniques possess city-level destructive capabilities. Just as the situation appears hopeless for Celine, a distinctive yellow foot suddenly lands on the battlefield, drawing attention as Flash makes his dramatic entrance. The God of Matter expresses confusion at this sudden interruption to their supposedly decisive battle. Unable to identify the source of this new presence, a flowing red cape billows dramatically in the wind, and Celine looks upward with growing hope and recognition. Upon seeing the distinctive appearance of his ally, he calls out the name Flash with obvious relief and renewed determination. Flash stands confidently before the massive transformed form of the God of Matter, creating a stark size comparison between the divine monstrosity and the seemingly small ant warrior. The god carefully observes Flash's distinctive golden external armor, quickly recognizing that this newcomer is indeed an ant despite his impressive appearance and obvious power. He inquires whether Flash represents one of the legendary 10 great beasts, demonstrating his knowledge of the power hierarchy that governs their world. Golden Cavalry arrives. Flash stares back at the divine opponent with calculating eyes, silently wondering whether this tentacled abomination truly represents an enemy god before committing to combat engagement. Without warning, Flash begins exuding tremendously intense energy that creates visible distortions in the surrounding air, and a blazing cross-shaped mark suddenly appears directly on the God of Matter's transformed body. The god's massive red eyes shakes with surprise at this unexpected development, but then he realizes with confusion that he has sustained no actual physical damage from the mysterious technique. Puzzled by this outcome, the God of Matter wonders whether the cross-marking was merely an illusion created by the ant's overwhelming killing intent, rather than a genuine attack with destructive potential. Suddenly, a distinct golden footprint becomes embedded in the solid ground, indicating that Flash has already begun his assault on the God of Matter with supernatural speed. The divine being attempts to defend himself using his crystallized tentacle, but the attack still manages to leave a small trail of blood on his supposedly impenetrable surface, proving that Flash possesses offensive capabilities that surpass normal limitations. The god immediately recognizes with growing concern that this ant opponent moves significantly faster than the mantis he was previously fighting, indicating a dramatic escalation in the threat level he now faces. Flash activates his strength multiplication skill, boosting his strike power by 6 times and preparing for his most devastating blow. He aims this enhanced attack directly at the god's massive red eye, which represents the most vulnerable and important target on his transformed body. Flash's tremendously powerful strike connects with such devastating force that it easily destroys substantial portions of the black pillar they're standing on, demonstrating that his enhanced attacks possess structural demolition-level destructive capabilities. Celine watches in stunned awe as the overwhelming shockwave from Flash's attack shakes the very air around him and creates effects that affect him even from his distant observation position. The brilliant flash of light generated by the collision gradually disappears, replaced by thick smoke that obscures the battlefield and makes it impossible to assess the immediate results. Celine finds himself sweating with nervous anticipation at the thought of witnessing such a single, tremendously powerful strike that could potentially end this entire confrontation in one decisive moment. The concealing smoke begins dissipating slowly, eventually revealing the God of Matter's current condition and the extent of damage inflicted by Flash's enhanced assault. Before the enemy's revealed form, Flash maintains his aggressive stance while charging up energy for yet another devastating attack, clearly not satisfied with the results of his initial strike. Round 2 incoming. Smoke everywhere, and Celine is absolutely losing his mind over Flash's power display. This ant just casually nuked half the battlefield and doesn't even turn around when complimented because he's built different. Instead, Flash asks if Celine is still functional after getting his hand turned into pasta by a god. Stigma doesn't need validation. Celine's jaw drops at this unexpected bro moment when suddenly Flash gets wrapped in lightning like he's charging his ultimate move. The ant promises revenge for his mantis buddy, which is honestly the most wholesome thing to happen during this divine apocalypse. But wait, there's more. A massive tentacle comes swinging through the smoke like a divine whip, clearing the air and revealing that the God of Matter is still breathing. This guy starts laughing maniacally because he just witnessed one of the 10 great beasts go absolutely nuclear, and he's apparently into that kind of thing. Flash looks up at this freak's power levels and basically goes, "This is excessive even for a god." The tentacle monster starts coordinating his appendages like he's conducting an orchestra of destruction. Celine screams for Flash to be careful, but the god basically says being careful is for weaklings, and immediately tries to turn Flash into ant pancakes with a coordinated tentacle strike. Careful is not in the vocabulary. Flash responds by becoming a golden laser beam and charging straight at this thing's massive eyeball. But plot twist, the eye shoots back with concentrated divine energy that basically tells Flash, "Not today, ant boy." The blast is so ridiculous it creates city block level destruction, and even Celine has to duck for cover. Celine watches this exchange and realizes he's been watching amateur hour compared to what these two powerhouses are throwing around. The god keeps blasting like he's got infinite mana, which is honestly unfair but expected from divine beings. Flash pulls a disappearing act and materializes behind the tentacle monster for a sneak attack. The god blocks with a tentacle and drops some lore. Apparently he traded speed for becoming an absolute tank build. Then he reveals his actual name is Limitless, and he's the 5th ranked god, which explains why he's been tanking everything like it's nothing. Tank build versus speedrun. The god tries to tentacle slap Flash into oblivion, but Flash treats those attacks like they're moving through molasses. Our golden ant starts charging energy and basically tells this divine fortress, your defense is impressive, but I'm about to end your whole career. Flash cranks his strength multiplication to 7 times and targets one of those crystallized tentacles. Connection. The tentacle actually gets damaged and starts shedding pieces like broken glass. Limitless stares at his wounded appendage like he just discovered fire for the first time. Celine starts cheering because finally someone managed to scratch this supposedly invincible freak. Limitless examines his tentacle like a confused mechanic, muttering about how even other gods couldn't hurt him before. Flash explains his strategy like he's giving a masterclass. Concentrate everything into one point, maximize speed, profit. He's basically solved the puzzle of divine invincibility through pure technique. This makes Limitless absolutely furious. The god starts mocking Flash for being proud of a scratch, but Flash is already powering up again. Our anti-hero declares that if this god can bleed, he can be killed, and cranks his multiplier to 8 times. Power creep in real time. Flash becomes a golden lightning bolt and goes straight for the money shot, that massive red eye. He slashes upward from bottom to top like he's performing surgery, and Limitless actually groans in pain. First tentacle damage, now eye damage, this god's invincibility warranty just expired. Flash doesn't stop there. He changes direction mid-air, leaving golden light trails like he's writing his signature in the sky. More tentacles try to stop him, but Flash circles around them so fast they literally fall apart from confusion. Then he hits the god dead center with everything he's got. Divine blood everywhere. Limitless gets sliced completely in half like a divine sandwich, and Flash lands like nothing happened while this god's body crashes down and destroys the ground. Flash looks at his broken blade and realizes he just pushed past his 7 times limit, which apparently comes with equipment durability issues. Flash checks on Celine like a concerned teammate, but the Mantis immediately screams that their opponent isn't actually dead. Because of course the god who just got bisected isn't done yet. That would be too easy. A tentacle shoots out of the smoke trying to kebab Flash, who slides over to Celine's position. Through the clearing smoke, they see Limitless in his new, barely alive but still fighting form. Because divine beings apparently don't understand when to quit, divine stubbornness engaged. Time for a flashback because this story loves giving us emotional context right before everything goes nuclear. Back at Misty Mountain, Flash drops the news to Celine that he's taking a trip to Australia, which sounds like the most random vacation ever. Celine asks how long he'll be gone, and Flash basically shrugs because even he doesn't know. Looking out at their beautiful home, Flash explains his master plan. Figure out how much he can grow while being far from their teacher. Solo training arc incoming. Flash gets philosophical about perfecting his power and promises he'll only return to their master's side once he's achieved true strength. Classic training montage setup right there. Back to the present where everything is exploding and the black pillar's top is completely destroyed. An explosion sends Flash sliding over to Celine's position like he just got hit by a divine truck. Celine stares at Flash's back, probably wanting to say something supportive, but also realizing his friend just got wrecked. Golden pieces of Flash's armor are falling to the ground. And our ant-hero is confused because he definitely dodged that attack but still got wounded somehow. Both Flash and Limitless live absolutely terrible as they square up for round whatever this is. Limitless starts trash-talking, shouting that Flash's speed doesn't make him untouchable from divine attacks. Then this guy decides to reveal his true form because apparently shedding like a snake is a divine hobby. Limitless crystallized tentacles start shifting and his whole body morphs into something that looks human-like from the waist up, similar to the divine tree's forms, but with his massive eye relocated to his chest and tentacles for legs. Celine watches this transformation and basically goes not again with the form changes. Divine makeover number 3. Limitless explains that he just shed his outer shell like it's no big deal and asks if Flash seriously thinks he can kill a god. He swings his newly giant arm at Flash's position, and when it connects with the ground, the impact creates destruction that makes previous attacks look like love taps. Flash manages to dodge and leaps near the god's head, going for what should be a finishing move. He cranks his strength multiplication to 8 times and strikes, but nothing happens. Flash's face just shows pure shock because his most powerful attack just bounced off like he hit a wall. Limitless smirks and activates Starburst, coating his entire body with spirit power like divine armor. Cracks start appearing all over Flash's arm, and he can't hide his complete surprise at this development. A bright ray of concentrated power blasts straight at Flash with nuclear intensity. He can't move fast enough to escape and takes the full force of this attack, which is so powerful it continues traveling beyond the planet's atmosphere. Orbital bombardment achieved. Celine screams Flash's name in panic. When Flash reappears through the smoke, 2 of his arms are completely gone. Limitless shouts that this is what happens when you underestimate a god, like he's giving a lecture on divine respect. Flash continues floating in the air as the attack smoke clears around him. Flash finally realizes that his enemy's form change wasn't just cosmetic. It completely altered the god's combat capabilities and movement patterns. He charges again because giving up isn't in his vocabulary, but suddenly the cracks in his body start bleeding. Flash looks down at himself in total confusion because this wasn't happening before. Limitless drops some terrifying knowledge, explaining that Flash is suffering from radiation poisoning. He reminds everyone that his body is composed of every mineral on their planet, including the radioactive ones. The god of matter casually mentions that anything above 4,000 sieverts can kill a living being, then reveals he's currently emitting 8.9 million sieverts of radiation. Flash keeps bleeding while this information sinks in. Since Sealeen is nearby, he starts coughing up blood too. Realizing that proximity to this god is literally killing them both through radiation exposure, Nuclear God is unfair. Limitless attacks while declaring that their doomsday has arrived, which is the most dramatic way to announce an execution. Due to his radiation injuries, Flash can't evade properly and gets smashed into the ground. The god laughs and comments that Flash could have dodged such a slow attack before getting poisoned, adding insult to injury. The divine beatdown continues as Limitless uses his crystallized tentacles to pummel Flash repeatedly. Our golden ant hero keeps bleeding while his protective shell crumbles with each impact, after sending Flash crashing to the ground again. Limitless mentions he's not even using full strength because he wants to play with his prey longer. Flash kneels on one knee, coughing and clearly in terrible condition. Behind him, Sealeen suggests they should escape to the void together, which sounds like the most reasonable plan anyone's had in this entire war. But Flash raises what's left of his right arm to block Sealeen, rejecting the escape offer while claiming he's fine. Limitless overhears this exchange and asks what Flash could possibly mean by staying. He's genuinely skeptical that a bleeding, armless ant still intends to fight a god. Flash releases golden energy despite bleeding everywhere, confidently announcing that fighting is exactly what he intends to do. He powers up even more, telling the god to watch closely and see what he relied on to survive in Australia. Limitless watches as more energy builds around Flash, who announces he's about to reveal his true strength. Australia training pays off. Time for another flashback because this story loves revealing power-ups at the most dramatic moments possible. We're back in Australia where the landscape looks like it went through multiple apocalypses. Flash steps on the ground and it just crumbles under his weight, which tells you everything about how intense his training was. Standing before him are 3 dragons, and Flash basically issues the ultimate challenge. Keep fighting until he masters this mystery ability, or they can kill him right there. Do or die training. Flash charges at these 3 dragons like he's completely lost his mind, declaring that failure means death. A massive burst of golden energy explodes across the wasteland, and you just know this training session was absolutely brutal. Back to the present where Limitless is watching smoke fill the entire area, probably wondering what Flash is cooking up. Sealeen can't see anything through the thick smoke, but then Flash starts exuding the same golden energy he used during his dragon training. This energy keeps bursting and lighting up the entire top of the black pillar like a divine disco ball. Limitless raises his crystallized tentacles, trying to figure out what's happening to his supposedly dying opponent. When the smoke clears, Flash has completely transformed, his golden shell turned red and his missing arms are back to normal. Even Limitless notices that Flash's entire aura has changed, and Sealeen recognizes this form as similar to when Flash merged with him previously. Golden energy keeps bursting from Flash as he explains the lore behind this transformation. Apparently his body took serious backlash when he first used this power, and it was only during his Australia journey that he finally mastered it. Classic training arc payoff right there. Australia made him stronger. Flash confidently invites Limitless to come at him since he can now use his full power without consequences. The God of Matter laughs at what he thinks is arrogance, probably not realizing he's about to get schooled by an ant who survived dragon training. Flash immediately attacks with his enhanced form, aiming straight at Limitless and sending a blast of golden energy that makes the god fall backward like he just got hit by a truck. Half of Limitless' head completely disappears from the attack, and seeing the divine blood confirms Flash's theory. No matter how much this god has evolved, he's still made of flesh and blood. Limitless gets irritated and attacks while warning Flash that the radiation poisoning won't disappear just because he powered up. The god promises to end Flash before the radiation does, which is honestly considerate in a twisted way. Flash shouts that they should end this fight immediately and slashes at Limitless, creating a deep gash across the god's chest. He promises to slice not only the shell but also the core, basically declaring his intention to completely destroy this divine being. Core destruction declared. Limitless fights back using Sonic Boom, making his entire body bright with spirit energy before blasting Flash with everything he's got. But Flash tanks the attack and casually says it's useless against his current form, then counters by striking with ninefold power. This attack not only stops the god's blast, but hits Limitless so hard it destroys him and the surrounding area. Sealeen shouts in surprise as the sheer force creates widespread destruction, even though Limitless is in terrible condition. Flash charges again because he's not taking any chances. Limitless admits Flash is incredibly fast and decides to seal that speed using environmental tactics. The god starts stacking rocks together using debris, laughing as he announces his plan to reduce Flash's movement options. He challenges Flash to use his speed now that he's trapped in a rock prison. The rocks completely envelope Flash, but not for long because slashes start appearing from within. Limitless gets sent flying when the rock formation explodes from the inside. The attack launches the god away while rocks rain down everywhere. The god of Matter's tattered form flies off with just his red eye and some tentacles remaining. And through the falling rocks, he can see Flash's shadow approaching. Flash declares that the god's defense is completely futile against his current power level. He admits it might have been different if Limitless had fought the other great beasts instead, but it's obvious the god picked the wrong opponent today. Suddenly, cracks start appearing all over Flash's body and he begins bleeding again. The radiation symptoms are getting worse, and Flash realizes his joints are beginning to rupture from the poisoning. Refusing to lose like this, Flash shouts that his next attack will be his final blow. Radiation timer running out. Flash strikes Limitless with his bladed hand, creating a small explosion of energy, but he's shocked when his attack doesn't connect. A protective shield is defending Limitless from the assault, and seeing Flash's difficulty, the god shouts that ending a god isn't easy. Just when things look bad, a sharp green stinger stabs at the shield from another angle. Celine has joined the attack, telling Flash to focus while they combine their efforts. The shield begins cracking under their coordinated assault, and both warriors shout as they charge forward with everything they have. Seeing his shield crack right before his eye makes Limitless panic and shout for them to stop, but it's too late. The protective barrier finally shatters into pieces, leaving him completely vulnerable to their combined finishing attack. Teamwork makes the dream work. The shield finally shatters and Flash and Celine's combined attack pierces straight through Limitless' massive eye. The god of matter can only express complete disbelief as he starts groaning and disintegrating, finally meeting his end after all that tanking and radiation spam. 5th-ranked god status couldn't save him from good old-fashioned teamwork. Flash and Celine stand together on the battlefield like absolute champions. The adrenaline from their epic fight finally leaves their bodies and they both stagger from exhaustion. Flash changes back to his normal golden form, relieved they've actually defeated this seemingly invincible enemy. His blades have completely shattered from the intense combat, proving even his enhanced form has limits. Divine Raid completed successfully. Looking down at the base of the pillar, Flash figures they just need to clean up the remaining enemies below and they'll be done with this whole mess. But the universe has other plans because debris suddenly starts floating around them, and a bright blue light shines from the pillar, sending beams straight into the sky. Celine looks up at this sudden change, probably thinking, what now? Ado appears flying toward them with urgent news. She shouts about the increasing energy from the pillar and orders Flash and Celine to destroy it immediately. She quickly explains that this pillar is part of some massive magical formation, and even though they don't know what it's designed to do, they absolutely cannot let it complete whatever evil plan it's powering. Flash understands the assignment and quickly gathers energy on his remaining bladed hand. He strikes the ground to attack the pillar's foundation, but something goes wrong. Flash suddenly shouts in pain and gets blasted away from the impact, his bladed arm completely destroyed in the process. Pillar has security measures. Celine catches Flash and shouts for his friend, realizing that Flash's attack was deflected and his body is completely filled with radiation poisoning. This makes Flash lose all strength to stand again, leaving him basically helpless. Celine knows the pillar must be destroyed, but Flash is in no condition to continue fighting. He stares ahead for a moment, then makes a decision and throws Flash to Ada. The Peregrine Falcon catches Flash with her claws while he gathers what little spirit power he has left. Flash calls out at Celine, asking what he's planning to do. Celine says he can't leave everything to Flash every single time and tells the ant to rest while he handles this situation. He claims that with his current strength level, destroying the pillar won't be too difficult. Then Celine announces his intention to take the entire pillar into the void, which sounds like the most dangerous plan possible. Celine recalls a painful conversation with the Divine Tree, who questioned whether he was qualified to stand alongside Flash. Their master even mentioned that Celine would only drag Flash down in serious battles. The Mantis believes his master was completely wrong about his potential, proving doubters wrong time. Emitting tremendous spirit energy, Celine shouts that he can definitely fight alongside Flash as an equal partner. He raises his remaining good arm and declares that he's not a burden to anyone. Celine brings Slashes down toward the pillar, claiming he'll be the one to end this threat once and for all. His attack sends a massive burst of energy and creates significant cracks throughout the pillar's structure. Seeing this dangerous situation developing, Flash breaks free from Ada's grip and shouts King Feng, using Celine's real name. Ada becomes startled and shouts for him to return, or he'll be caught in the explosion. Flash emits golden energy and shoots towards Celine's attack zone like a golden missile. He manages to reach his friend just as the combined assault creates an explosion that shoots energy rays in multiple directions. Ada tears up as she shouts for both her friends who just threw themselves into what looks like a suicide mission. Once the massive explosion ends, thick smoke fills the entire area. Something tumbles to the ground with a heavy impact. When the smoke finally dissipates, there's a huge crater and battle scars from the previous fight, but absolutely no trace of the black pillar remains. Mission accomplished, but at what cost? On the ground in the crater, Celine calls out to Flash, who only has his upper body left after the explosion. Flash says he won't let Celine die again, referencing their shared history of sacrifice. Celine sees Flash's terrible condition and starts crying, begging him not to die. He turns back to Ada and desperately asks for the essence of life. Emergency healing needed now. Flash tells Celine to forget about trying to save him and calls him King Feng again, saying this name still suits the Mantis best. With those final words, Flash closes his eyes and goes still. Celine cries for Flash to wake up, repeatedly calling his friend's name while hugging his broken body. He begs for help from anyone who can hear him while Ada watches in similar hopeless despair. In that deep crater, Seelin keeps shouting for help over and over again. He continues crying and calling for assistance as the reality of losing his best friend sets in. The situation looks completely hopeless for our heroes. Suddenly, the sound of wings flapping fills the air above them. The crane and white stag appear overhead, causing Seelin to look up in complete shock while even Ada becomes speechless. In the crane's beak is a bottle of essence of life, the exact thing they need to save Flash. The cavalry has arrived with the ultimate healing item just when all hope seemed lost. Miracle delivery service. Over in Freedom Federation, everything is on fire and smoke fills the air while a monstrous spider like God laughs at how pathetically insignificant the humans are. This guy is having the time of his life watching civilization burn, which is peak villain energy. A blue light suddenly shoots at the spider beast, and the god gets surprised because he feels his strength increasing again. Another god just died somewhere, which means more power for the survivors thanks to that broken divine power redistribution system. Humans in tight suits and masks notice this sudden change, but the spider god is already preparing his next attack because he's riding this power high. The spider beast shouts happily, claiming that if this keeps up, he'll become the strongest god in existence. Classic villain logic. Absorb power, become unstoppable. Rule everything. Buff stacking to maximum. Meanwhile, in the central region, the god of nature is going full volcanic mode, using his volcano skill to create massive fires everywhere. Little Panda responds with his signature Crimson Lotus solar flare and charges straight at this nature-obsessed divine freak. He connects with a direct hit to the nature god's face, making the enemy groan in pain because even gods feel it when Little Panda throws hands. Some seeds suddenly fall in front of Little Panda and immediately start sprouting at supernatural speed. The plant grows instantly and vines wrap around Little Panda in what the nature god calls nature's growth. Little Panda frowns as he realizes his spirit power is getting absorbed by these parasitic plants, which is honestly a terrifying ability. Flower buds appear on the vines and start blooming, which would be beautiful if it wasn't part of a divine assassination attempt. The nature god opens his massive mouth like he's planning to eat Little Panda whole, because apparently gods have zero table manners. Plant god wants a snack. Little Panda uses frozen fist to freeze the vines wrapping him because ice beats plants every time. He shouts that this is child's play and mocks the god for relying on ambush tactics, asking if this pathetic vine trick is really all a divine being can manage. The nature god gets absolutely furious at this disrespect and asks if creatures from Little Panda's planet are always this arrogant. A massive gust of wind forms around him, turning into a spinning tornado that surrounds the god like a natural disaster barrier. The tornado disappears to reveal the nature god in his true divine physique, and Little Panda grins because he's excited to see his opponent finally using full strength. Time for the real fight to begin. On a different battlefield, an enemy god with black flames for a head is facing Yulei, the master of magnetism. This flaming skull god comments that Yulei's spirit power isn't as impressive as he expected, which is basically asking for a demonstration of why that assumption is wrong. Yulei tells the god to hold that thought because he'll definitely regret underestimating human ingenuity after he's dead. Classic human confidence in the face of divine arrogance. Bold words from the mortal. The god's black flames start expanding as he claims immortality and reveals that he controls death itself in this world. He transforms into his divine physique while introducing himself as the god of death, which explains the whole flaming skull aesthetic. Yulei finds this absolutely ridiculous and raises his hand with obvious confidence. Electrifying energy runs through the air as missiles float around him like a high-tech arsenal. He declares that even if his opponent is a god, it doesn't change the fact that everything eventually comes to an end, including divine beings. Yulei directs the missiles toward his enemy at tremendous speed, creating a massive explosion that lights up the entire battlefield. When the fire and smoke clear, the god of death reappears claiming that death cannot be chosen by mortals, then raises his staff to release black flames from it. The death god adds that death also cannot be rejected, transforming his flames into weapon-carrying skeletons that charge at Yulei like an undead army. This god really committed to the whole death theme. The master of magnetism raises his power-filled hand and announces some science facts. Skeletons are composed of 70% minerals, including iron. He closes his fist, and all the skeletons immediately fly apart into pieces because magnetism beats calcium every time. Chemistry class during combat. The god of death maintains the same expression while watching his army get instantly dismantled. Yulei shouts that he won't be defeated by his opponent, which the god finds interesting enough to challenge the entire human race's power level. The death god releases flames that transform into a huge beast, which roars and charges at Yulei with its mouth wide open, probably planning to swallow him whole. The master of magnetism simply lifts one hand and destroys the entire flame beast like it's absolutely nothing, demonstrating that physics beats magic. The god of death groans in frustration while Yulei keeps his hand outstretched, explaining that everything in the world consists of atoms, including spirit power itself. He uses magnetic fields to alter the structure of spirit power at the molecular level, which is the most science-based combat technique ever. Though the god of death might not understand the physics lesson he's receiving, Yulei promises to make sure the god comprehends it through practical demonstration during their fight. Educational beatdowns are the best kind. Offended by this scientific dismissal of his divine powers, the god of death prepares to attack while claiming it's just about making his spirit power ineffective. Yulei uses extreme speed to fly directly at the death god's position, because sometimes the best strategy is simple aggression. The god swings his staff and activates Death Curse, explaining that this technique gathers the resentment of dead souls and kills anyone who comes into contact with it. Sounds terrifying in theory. A hand suddenly appears right in front of the god of death's face. Yulei grabs the god's head directly, proving the Death Curse completely pointless against someone who understands atomic structure. He asks what the god was saying since he didn't hear him over the sound of divine techniques failing. Did you say something? Waves of electrifying power surge through the battlefield as Yulei demonstrates why humans shouldn't be underestimated. The god of death gets tossed to the ground at a considerable distance, the part of his bony face cracked and revealing the muscle tissue beneath. The death god stares at his human opponent, completely confused about what just happened. He cannot believe that Yulei wasn't affected by the death curse and simply charged through it like it was nothing. Yulei's cape billows dramatically, revealing that he's holding the god's severed limb in his hand like a trophy. He raises the appendage, explaining that it represents the god's spiritual body, then easily crushes it into absolute nothingness with casual strength. The god of death just learned that divine powers mean nothing when your opponent understands the fundamental forces of the universe better than you do. Physics PhD beats theology.